Thank you for staying tuned. Sudan has signed deals for loans worth $300 million with regional Arab funds as the government struggles to cope with an economic crisis and nearly 3 months of street protests. The Finance Ministry agreed a $230 million loan with the Abu Dhabi-based Arab Monetary Fund to support the balance of payments. The deal for a second loan worth $70 million was signed with the Arab Trading Finance Program, whose shareholders include the Arab Monetary Fund, and which is also based in Abu Dhabi. The deals were signed as President Omar al-Bashir and other officials, including the central bank governor, met Arab Monetary Fund Director General Abdurrahman al-Hamidi in the capital Khartoum. A worsening economic crisis in Sudan triggered frequent demonstrations across the country since December 19, in which protesters have called for an end to Bashir's 3-decade rule. The government has expanded the money supply, pushing inflation to more than 70% before the end of last year, before it slowed to under 50% in January and February. And the African Development Bank and the World Bank have pledged to commit more than $47 billion by 2025 to help African countries tackle the effects of climate change. Many countries on the continent, especially those on the coast, are among the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change, such as rising sea levels and coral reef deterioration. The World Bank has pledged $22.5 billion for 2021 to 2025, while AfDB is committing $25 billion to climate finance between 2020 and 2025. AfDB says the funds will be used to increase investment in renewable energy projects like solar power plants.
The African Development Bank is committing $25 billion to climate finance between 2020 and 2025. And that is something that we are continuing from what we're already doing. If you take a look at our financing in terms of renewable energy, the share of our portfolio in energy generation that was in renewable energy between 2013 and 2015 was 59%. But from 2015 to 2018, we moved that to 95%. And in fact, in 2017, we achieved 100% of all of our investments in energy generation was all in renewable energy. So what we've got to do is recognize we have potentials in this area. But I'm yet to see a market in the world for potential. Nobody eats them, right? You've got to turn that into energy. And that's why every investment that we are making is how to help Africa to unlock its potential in terms of solar power. And we've done that with Morocco. They have the largest solar power plant in the world, the Noor Uzizati. With wind, we've invested as African Development Bank here in Lake Turkana project, which is 310 megawatts, which is the largest wind power plant in Africa. But also with geothermal, we're investing a lot in geothermal here in the Rift Valley here in Kenya, in Rwanda. We have one also with DRC, Ruzizi, and also in Burundi.
Kiyomi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank. A Kenyan court on Friday ruled that a cap on commercial bank interest rates is unconstitutional. The court, however, suspended the implementation for 12 months to allow Parliament to re-examine the law. Well, joining us now to tell us more about this is a sub-Saharan African banking sector analyst, George Bodo. He joins us from Nairobi. Good afternoon, Mr. Bodo. Thank you very much for coming through to us.
Good afternoon.
Now, after about 2 years of implementation of the rate cut, a Kenyan court has suspended the move. How has this news been received in the banking sector?
Well, the news has been it's been mixed for 2 reasons. One is that it's not a final decision in my assessment because it creates a legal limbo in 2 ways. One is that there is still a window for appeal to a higher court, and that has already happened. The Consumer Federation of Kenya, which is an association of a federation of representing consumers, including borrowers, has already gone to court and appealed the decision at a higher court. And that's one. And the second thing is that the judge basically ordered, by declaring that Section 33B of the Banking Act is unconstitutional. He suspended that declaration for 12 months, ostensibly to give Parliament time to either delete that clause or amend it to the extent that it becomes constitutional. But that presents a problem because there's some precedence here. Parliament has always tended not to ignore orders from a court, and the reason why they do that is because they cite their own independence in lawmaking, and because Parliament is one of the branches of the executive. So we have, one of the branches of the government. So we have the executive, we have judiciary, we have the Parliament. So Parliament has always tended to ignore orders from the judiciary. There's a precedence here. And the main reason is that they cite their own independence in making law. So there's potentially a legal standoff there. There's a high chance that Parliament can say, we're not going to follow the order from the court.
Now, in all of this, what is the outlook for the Kenyan banking sector?
I think the outlook is still very, in my assessment, it's still very weak, based on the fact that if you look at balance sheets are not growing, if you look at, for some of the few banks that have released the results so far, there is a general lack of balance sheet growth. And that means that the ROE, the banking sector ROE is still likely to come in below 20% in local currency terms. And primarily the fact that there is a lack of onboarding of risk assets at banks. And a lot of banks are still citing the fact that they cannot price risk as they perceive it. And ostensibly driven by them, the caps.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, George Bodo. George Bodo is a sub-Saharan Africa banking sector analyst. And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of the program. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.